Fathers who walked out on your children, what's your side of the story? Before I turned 13, my dad was my hero. I'd update him with gossip on every person in my class, and we had hundreds of inside jokes that we'd quote daily. And hanging out with him and my mom together was even better. You would have sworn that we were a family straight out of a TV show. But my dad had other plans, because one day he walked out and I simply never saw him again. At first my mom told me he had a work trip, but then the reasons kept changing until one day she looked at me defeatedly and said, "Your daddy is gone, sweetie. Your daddy left us." At this point she was in tears. She told me it wasn't my fault and that I don't need to worry because everything will be okay. I thought that it was only a matter of time before he'd return, but months passed and reality slapped me harder than Will Smith. Whenever I tried to ask questions about it, my mom would give me vague answers that didn't even make any sense. Eventually things at home got so depressing that school was my only escape. I threw myself into tests and assignments, which made me a straight A student. Anytime thoughts of my dad popped into my brain, I switched my focus to school subjects, especially history class, and that's when I learned about the beauty of the Titanic. I still remember seeing the glittery palace of dreams for the first time, floating on the water like an angel on ice. The story of how everyone was unalived fascinated my teenage brain to no end. And to top it all off, it had never been easier to delete the memory of my dad, because now I had something much better to think about. And even when we moved on to a new topic in history class, I stayed loyal to the ship. I started dressing like I was in the early 1900s and insisted on taking ice-cold baths to see what it felt like in the Atlantic. There was only one thing missing. The Titanic was built all the way in Ireland, and my mom ripped my heart out and crapped all over it when she told me she wouldn't pay for the trip, and that I wasn't allowed to get a job until I was 16, which was 3 years away. I told her it was no wonder that Dad left us, and I regretted the words as soon as they left my mouth. But before I could apologize, she immediately held me and told me it wasn't either of our faults. I felt tears come to my eyes, so I thought back to the Titanic, about the epic dining halls and how the first-class passengers had a private pool. And as usual, I felt completely fine again. From then on, me and my mom rarely mentioned his disappearance again, and I was counting down the days until I turned 16. I knew that being in the same place the ship was built in would make me feel whole again. And yes, I was eventually diagnosed with autism. Then a few years passed and the day finally arrived where I got accepted as a cashier at Walmart. I was so dedicated to the job that customers would even offer me tips at the checkout, and I got Employee of the Month for 6 months straight, meaning I was able to afford a trip to Belfast with my mom. Butterflies filled my stomach as I booked the flights. I spent hours every day role-playing with other like-minded Titanic lovers online, pretending that we were passengers about to onboard the ship. I even kept a diary pretending I had lost my husband in the crash and documented it as if it was really happening. So when the day finally came that I was stepping foot into the museum, I felt my heart beating in my throat. The spectacular shrine took my breath away. Each step was better than the last. It was the most I'd felt at home since my dad left. We went to the museum every single day during our 5-day trip, and my mom didn't even complain when I insisted we had to spend all day there. Little did she know this was only the tip of the iceberg, because when the trip ended I was desperate for more. Then I realized what I had needed all along, an original menu from the shipwreck, and the fact that they were priced at about $25,000 wasn't going to stop me, but I knew Walmart wouldn't be enough anymore. I sold me and my mom's old clothes on Depop, which left me with a measly $400. I knew I had to lock in, so I dedicated all my free time to hustling. I started a nail and lash tech business, did DoorDash and Uber every evening, but since I was still in school, I wasn't able to earn more than $500 a week, and at that point I was so desperate that I would have started in a page if I wasn't still a minor. I tried to ask people in my Titanic forums what I should do, because a lot of them had been in my position before, but the only reply I got was this one guy who sent laughing emojis and called me a loser. I sent a selfie showing my anger and he said he was sorry and that I was really pretty. From there started our situationship because he won me over when he told me he could help me earn some real money. He told me about this app I could download where if I got other people to sign up, I get money instantly. I had no choice but to trust him. I tried it out and got a few people in the forum to sign up and earned $400. But since this was nowhere near the $25,000 I needed, I was pretty suspicious. But then he explained to put the money into names on the app, and if I got the right ones I could make my $25,000 in no time. He pinky promised that this was real and told me he'd help me more if I went on a date with him after buying the Titanic menu. I would have eaten my own vomit for weeks if it meant getting that thing, so obviously I agreed. Over the next few weeks we called for an hour almost every day and he would walk me through what to do. And after 2 months I checked my red and green arrows and saw my Nvidia stocks boomed and made me $32,000. I couldn't believe it. I immediately hopped onto eBay and placed a bid on the menu I had my eye on, and waited for God to work his magic. My life would finally be complete. And then horror struck because the next day I received an email saying they had already given it away to a higher bidder. I was heartbroken. I told my mom what had happened and cried for the first time since my dad left. I couldn't believe everything had fallen apart. And the worst part was, my mom didn't even look upset. She just stroked my hair and told me it's best if I use the money for some good therapy. I agreed since I definitely needed a professional to talk about this grief. It felt like no one understood what I was going through. And my therapist ended up just spewing BS about how I have fatherly issues that I've repressed. Update. It's been 2 years since starting therapy, and I've changed a lot since writing this. I worked through a lot of my issues and have learned it's okay to cry. And while I still hold the Titanic close to my heart, I'm definitely not the same girl anymore. I've since graduated and made $100,000 from using the app, which a lot of you have asked for, and it's called Bloom Learn to Invest.